I hold a PhD in ethnology, and I graduated the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences, where my PhD work was supervised by Veselin Popov, a famous scholar in Romani studies, who together with his life partner and partner in research, Elena Marushakova, have established the Romani library at the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences and built a collective, a group of researchers, Roma collaborators, PhD students, and others who are interested in Romani issues, not only in Bulgaria, but in Southeastern Europe. My PhD was on Montenegro, so it was on Montenegrin identity after the fall of Yugoslavia, but a substantial part of it was related to the Romani groups in that region, in Montenegro and beyond. I also, parallel to this, I have been interested in Romani literature, first as practitioner. I was working for one foundation that supported books in Romani language in order to develop the Romani writing tradition. That's how I actually got interested into Romani language and publishing in Romani language. And I decided that the coordinator of a Romani language publishing program should know a bit about the language. So I paired with a famous Romani activist and researcher, Liliana Kovacheva, who is actually my first teacher in Romani language, but not only. She introduced me to Romani culture, to the international network of Romani activists. So I learned a lot, not only in terms of language, but also in terms of a Romani environment, Romani culture, and so on. From then on, I really developed an interest into Romani literature. So I collected a lot of information, a lot of books. I had a lot of contacts with people from any background who were publishers, editors, translators, and authors of books. And then my postdoctoral project was called Romaneli La, or Romani Books, and was developed at the University of Iceland with the support of the Icelandic Research Fund, because at that time we were building an international center under UNESCO called the Vigdís International Center for Multilingualism and Intercultural Understanding, that was with focus on minority and small languages, minor languages, and the Romani topic was very welcomed at that point. Later on, I developed the Roma in the Center program and became the director of this center, where we had organized a lot of activities, including international conferences, workshops, meetings of Romani scholars, speeches by Romani activists and individuals that highlight the topic of Romani language and Romani writing tradition. And what I look at in my research is first the history of Romani literature. So I'm particularly interested in the development of Romani literature, and my research actually claims and proves that Romani literature is not a young literature, because we have Romani authors writing at the second half of the 19th century. So basically this literature developed absolutely parallel to all modern European literatures. Well, the fact is, of course, that many of these texts remained unpublished or unpromoted because of the lack of support, of course, of a modern national state in this regard. So I look in the history of Romani literature. I make a theory or a pattern of how Romani literature develops. So I talk in my books and in my research about few periods of the Romani literature. That would be the first period would be at the end of the 19th century until the Second World War. Then we would have from the Second World War to the 1980s, where a lot of books were published, but in the framework of national states. And then we do have a period after the 1990s where we know that there is a stronger international Romani movement. So we know the activities of international organizations, networks of Romani authors and activists. So then I speak about the period of internationalization and globalization of Romani literature, thanks to which Roma authors from different countries are known beyond the borders of their own countries. We also have in this period establishment of international initiatives like the International Romani Writers Association or the Pen Club of Romani Authors based in Berlin under the leadership of Rajko Đurić and so on. So I'm really interested into how Romani literature develops historically on the one hand, but also how Roma authors develop narratives that would reinforce a common Romani identity. My point of view, of course, also in my work as ethnologist, I applied the theory of Elena Marushakova and Veselin Popov, and they speak, of course, about different layers and dimensions of Romani identity. And I think the most fundamental thing that is a key to understanding both Romani identity but also Romani literature would be the fact that Roma live at least in two dimensions, according to the theory of Marushakova and Popov. One is the community dimension, so that means to which Roma group you belong. That is a fundamental element of any Roma individual and community identity, so the group belonging, the community belonging, but also the society belonging. So Roma always, they're not isolated, but they are part of a big society of a national state. So here we are in Slovakia. So it is not coincidental that we speak about Slovak Roma or about Hungarian Roma or Bulgarian Roma, because every Roma from this country, apart from their own group Romani identity, would have also national identity, which is also normal. And now we live in the global world. So in the global world, also Roma migrate. They're part of the global process of migrations. So you may have Roma from Slovakia or from other countries, Bulgaria, living now in Germany, in the UK, in other countries, who also develop another kind of identity, or the generations after. So we have many layers of identity today for the Roma, which are not at all in conflict with their Romani identity, because today's world is global, and I'm from Bulgaria, I live in Iceland, I do have many layers of identity. So thinking about it, I don't think that diversity of Roma groups is an obstacle to creating a common narrative for Romani identity. And we see this in literature actually, because who writes Romani literature? These usually are Roma who are educated, but they are not only writers. So these Roma are usually public figures, activists. So they form the leadership of the Roma, and writing is only one part of their actions to claim a Romani identity. So we know that many Roma writers have been working for the Roma community, have been leading organizations, have been politicians, and so on. And through writing, actually, they extend their activism and their actions to communicate vision for a common Romani unity, or for a development of the Roma, or just to inform and maybe hopefully deconstruct some of the worst stereotypes existing among the major society. And when we speak about literature, actually, many of the Roma activists who write do have a strong sense of the fact that Roma are, of course, there are different groups of Roma, there are different Roma identities depending on the national state, but there is something that unites them. So lay Roma, they know that they are other Roma, but of course those who are activists and leaders of Roma communities, they usually network together. So we have international Roma organizations as the International Roman Union that usually had sections on language and literature and education, and they do think of common things that could be done for the Roma internationally or implemented nationally. So, of course, having different types of identity and diversity would not be, I think, a big issue when we speak about a Romani identity. You know, it would work on different levels. We often know that Romani authors choose to write in a non-Romani language, usually the language that is official or majority language in the country. Why they do this? It is not because they are not fluent in their own Romani language. It is not because they cannot write in it. It is not because Romani language is not a valid language for publications. It is because Romani authors would like to encounter and to deconstruct this century-long prejudices and stereotypes about their own community. So they would like, so to say, to communicate their own ideas through literature that could reach the audiences, that is not Roma audiences, and can hopefully change their bad stereotypes that create the environment for segregation or for reaffirming these stereotypes. And also, of course, some authors would write in both languages, so in a majority language and in a Romani language, because, of course, they also would like to show that Romani language is a valid language, developed language that is worth of a language of publication. So it is a real language, and we often, of course, hear some nonsense like, is this a real language, but can you write in it? It's completely not a literate language, and so on. And I do think that Romani literature in this respect has a high value, symbolic and practical, to demonstrate to both Roma and non-Roma that this is a language that can elevate the community, that is worth as all other languages as being language of publication. Also, another aspect, we do know that in world literature created by non-Roma, like literary classics, we know that they are very stereotypical image of segregated Roma, of poor Roma who are exotic, both exotic and very free-spirited, but also very marginalized. And so on. But now many authors in their countries, they try to write literature that would reflect the reality. So we would have literature written by non-Roma that addresses social issues as segregation, as persecution, as the Holocaust, to highlight that the Roma community has been persecuted, and to maybe demonstrate to the reading audience in their countries that these are issues that have to be addressed, and these are like problems in society that have to be highlighted. So we see no longer that, of course, the exotic image has always existed and will exist in film, in media, in literature, but we do see a sort of a tendency in the majority writing about it that tries to authenticate the narratives about Roma and maybe address also these issues of social segregation in a way that would consider really the problem and the real nature of this problem, and hopefully make some changes. And I do think that Romani literature and having libraries as the one that you have created here in Prešov is extremely important to really show to the majority society, to decision takers, just to the lay public who comes to this library, that there is a rich Roma culture that is not related to social segregation or to the effects of this segregation, but that is completely equal to the others. What I looked into my research is exactly on the creation of common narratives among the Roma authors narratives that would be similar to, in different by different authors. So, of course, one topic that we see in literature, and I have looked into this, and I will quote some authors who wrote about it. It would be the Indian origin of the Roma. So we do know that the question about origin of people and of communities is of key importance for their identity. So we would have, and this is a quotation from articles that I have been written. So, for instance, Latif Demir, who is a Romani a scholar from Macedonia, he wrote a book. He wrote, of course, different books, but one of them was about the origin of the Roma, from a marriage of Chen and Gan. So this would be a Roma individuals that would form the beginning of the Roma community, so to say, coming from India towards Europe. Then the same narrative about the Indian origin of the Roma in a different form would appear, for instance, in the book of Ramona Taikon Meckler and Ann Eriksson in Sweden, in which this is a very nice picture book about a Romani girl who has her ordinary life, enjoys going to clubs, to school, spending the summer vacation with her family, and so on. But she also points the Romani origin of the Indian origin of the Roma, because she says, I like Indian style things, and my room is in Indian style. That is because maybe maybe this is because Roma come from India. So there are these kind of narratives that we see, and because, of course, now we are here in Prešov, which is, of course, important place for Romani literature because of Elena Lackova, who I could say is one of certainly the most famous author in the region, but also beyond the borders of the region. She is very famous due to translations and due to also articles and scholarship about her. And I think that the memoir literature or biographies are also very important, or works based on biographies are also very important for the Roma community and also for the Roma authors, because they do communicate narratives about the life of the Roma that are authentic, but also they are always entangled with historical events, which is extremely important. So from the work of Elena Lackova, we do understand a lot about the context of the interwar years and the situation of the war of course, most important of the Second World War. And there's the post-war situation and the engagement of Roma and the disappointments of Roma and the expectations of Roma and so on. So we, through this kind of literature, we have a lot of reflections on the historical context that could be used as sources, but of course combined with other historical sources as well. Then also speaking about the Holocaust topic, it is, or the Second World War, it is of course of a huge importance for Roma to communicate their memory about what had happened to them. And of course the most famous names would be Chaya Stoica, who published her memoir in Austria, and Filomena Franz, who approximately at the same time published her memoir in Germany. And we would have many authors, but note that the experience of the Roma was not only to be in the concentration camp. They were persecuted, killed on the spot, and so on. In this respect, the poem Tears of Blood by Bronislava Weiss-Papusha, that narrates not about the life of Roma in camps, but the persecution of Roma and killing them, and the attempts of Roma groups and Roma families to survive on the background of this event is also important, because, and also Elena Lackova, she also described about the situation during the Second World War. So the historical experiences of the Roma, particularly during the Second World War, also form a core a core element in the of the common narratives in Romani literature. Then we should not forget also that Roma also had joined the partisan movement or the resistance movement during the Second World War. And I'm really and also we have such documents and we have such events also, and I look forward to reading more also about this kind of narratives. So they are indeed joint narratives that we encounter in Romani literature that are important for both Romani identity but also Romani history. To earn a place in mainstream literature, of course, you need a talent, you need collaborators, you need chances, and you need support by mainstream players. We do have a lot of talented authors, not only now, because now maybe it's easier. If you're not published by a mainstream publisher, you just publish it on the internet and you maybe become a star because people are now, everyone is on the internet. But let's say in the interwar period, we do have a couple of novels that were produced by Roma authors. And I'm here speaking about a situation that I know the best in Yugoslavia in the interwar years. We have an activist he was editor-in-chief of a newspaper, Romanolil, and his name is Svetozar Simic. He wrote at least 2 novels in the interwar years and proposed them for publishing in the mainstream publisher, and he got rejected. Because, of course, a novel needs a lot of investment, and many publications need a lot of investment, but novel would be, and no one would like to risk supporting an author that is not famous, that is Roma, and so on. So I do think that that of course, being talented and having professional editors and professional publishers would be the key for entering the mainstream scene. And we know that many successful Romani authors, not only in their country, but now in the world, were paired with someone who promoted their work, which is completely valid pattern also in non-Romani literature. We have so many books that are published as a result of collaborative work, of professional editing work. We know a lot of memoirs of famous personalities in the world that are actually narrated by them and produced by their editor or collaborator of the publisher that publishes them. And this is completely a valid pattern. And it is really important for the Romani literature scene to enter professional circles by international or national competitions, mainstream, by membership in national unions, trying to be published by publishing houses that are part of the national network and distribution scene. And Desider Banga, of course, he's world famous, I would say, for people who know Romani literature, and he was active both in the period before the 1990s and afterwards, and a very talented author, maybe not as translated as other authors, but certainly has a big place, I think, in the Romani literary scene. But really entering professional circles is difficult, but also important so that the Romani literature is visible nationally. And in this respect, I guess also compromises have to be made, because we know about works that were titled in different way, but the publishers or editors wanted to have something like gypsy writing or gypsy something on the cover, in order to make it for marketing purposes, basically, because Romani, of course, it means a lot to us, but for mainstream readers or for readers who access literature, Romani, it's not sure if it's about the Roman Empire or if it's about something. So putting gypsy on the cover would attract readers, and sometimes authors have to compromise with this in order to make to be published by mainstream publishers. It's a big question when when there is a discussion about what is Romani literature. It's of course a big question and many discussions. And my short definition is that Romani literature is literature or publications produced in Romani language or for Romani audience, among others. And this is a really broad definition, but if we look at the historical and contemporary development of Romani literature, it looks very well. Because, of course, many Roma authors would write on a Roma topic, which is quite natural, and that's why the literature is called also self-referential, because Roma authors would choose to write on a Romani topic, which is not surprising because we do know that through literature many authors would like to highlight Roma topic to claim historical justice or to just inform the reading audiences about the authentic life of the Roma. So this is very natural. And some scholars or researchers would say that Romani literature has to deal with Romani topic. Well, I'm not supporter of this definition, because I think that Romani literature can deal with any topic. If produced by, a Roma could write about, the global situation, or a history of the non-Roma, or just a history of a character without saying anything about their ethnicity. So I think that it is also important that Roma authors address topics that are of social importance, but not necessarily deal with Roma characters or Roma main topic. So I think that, and we have examples today. For instance, in the Czech Republic, there are many female authors, as we know there. So there are authors who would write on a completely just, they have their literary characters and they're not necessarily Roma. If we look at the poetry of Jovan Nikolic, who is an important Romani author, who is one of the examples that is also successful in the mainstream literary scene in Yugoslavia, Serbia, and Germany currently. Many of his works are not centered on a Romani topic. And this is also important. We show that Romani authors can be engaged with any other topic and be part of the world literary scene. I think the most important thing, as in any other kind of identity, is self-identification. If a Roma author would like to be branded as a Roma author among others, then they are Roma authors. But speaking about this, many Roma authors, so there are Roma authors, Roma individuals who say, no, I'm Hungarian author, or I'm Serbian author, or whatever. And if they don't identify as part of the Romani literary scene, so then they should not be classified as Romani authors. This is the first point, but of course, as also the Roma, the identity of the Roma, sometimes, this Roma would like to be identified as they're part of the national literary scene. You already mentioned Jovan Nikolic, for instance. For him, it's important that he is a Serbian author, not only Romani author, that he is now a German author. His main publisher is German publishers. So, these multi-layers of identity that are valid for the Roma communities are completely valid for the Roma authors as well. Also, on the other hand, we do have authors who are part of the Romani literary scene, but are not Roma by origin. So, for instance, Gunilla Lundgren, who is one of the main authors who published and produced books in Romani language in Sweden. She is a Swedish Roma author of mainly children literature, but not only, who paired with Roma, who told their life stories to her, and she put these life stories into writing, and most of them are translated at least in one Romani dialect. So she is, of course, a major contributor to the Romani literary scene in Sweden, and every Roma would consider her a Romani author. So we also have to consider that Roma authors are not necessarily of Romani background. It's, of course, this Bărime Standing was a book that was highly criticized by many Roma and Romani studies scholars because first, it strengthens a lot of stereotypes about the Roma and reaffirms one of the worst, actually, stereotypes about them. And Jan Hancock, for instance, and I quote his critic of it, he just simply says that there are a lot of lies in this book, and a lot of unconfirmed fact and stereotypes. And like, for instance, he quotes the sentences in which he says Roma lie, and Roma lie a lot, and this, put in a book from authoritative publisher in New York, in English language, and having access to all the mainstream publishers and the mainstream publishing scene is highly problematic, and also, unfortunately, highly problematic in practical terms, because you would have many people who would refer to this book. Yeah, see, she has traveled and so on. Yeah, first, of course, we know that this author, this was a travelogue. So this is basically, she traveled in Eastern Europe, she met Romani studies, people into Romani studies and Romani activism, and she put the information there with some reflections, of course, in a very readable style, and so on. But then the problem is when this book that is a travelogue, is taken as a reference, and there is a critic that Elena Marushalkova and Veselin Popov make in their article on Orientalism in Romani Studies, in which they actually criticize that this book was taken by a publishing program that promoted Romani Studies books and was put on the list of books that should be translated into the languages of Eastern Europe and be applied as methodology for studying the Roma. So, the whole thing of this environment that would promote a book that is not academic, that is highly problematic and reaffirms the worst stereotypes about Roma, has been criticized, and I fully second this criticism. Unfortunately, we have also other similar publications that would be based on experience of people who would choose to go to and this is essentially the pattern of many media narratives. Of course, when a media goes to a Roma settlement, they would pick, of course, the poorest possible settlement in the region, and if they are in a neighborhood, they would choose the poorest possible part of the neighborhood in order to for this image to correspond to the stereotypes of the marginal and so on. And sometimes maybe there would be some positive examples of educated Roma who are doctors, who are teachers, who are lawyers, and so on, that made news because they are considered a great exception on the background of the ghetto and so on. And of course, there is a lot of contribution, unfortunately, by the media that would always prefer to portray the Roma between these two stereotypes as highly marginalized, at the same time very exotic and free and ready to dance any moment and to sing. We have these two patterns that are the absolutely exotic gypsy, that is carefree, nomadic, not obeying the rules and so on because this person is free or character, and then the completely marginal. And usually they go together, these two stereotypes, and we see them reproduced in art. We see them reproduced in film, we see them reproduced in media, and also in pop culture. even today. We often see inspired characters that have this look as a gypsy and who are usually nomadic and who are presented as belonging to an exotic community, have magic powers and so on. But I want to make like maybe a parallel with the Sami culture. That is the Sami, formerly known as Laplanders, but now they have affirmed the name of Sami. So they live in the northern part of Europe in several countries. And actually, the movie Frozen 1 portrays Sami characters, but with some stereotypical characteristics. And Sami organizations, they made petition to Disney and made them work with them to portray the Sami culture in a correct way, because we have many pop culture producers who take element, something that is a process called appropriation, take element from cultures or communities that have been highly stereotyped, take this element and put them in a narrative that whatever the intention is very often not based really on authentic culture, because they don't work with people who know deeply this culture. They just operate with these stereotypes that are in pop culture. So the activities that the Sami Film Institute and the Sami Parliament in Norway and other Sami organizations did, they basically petitioned the Disney producers, and they were invited by them. They signed a contract, and the second edition of Frozen, which we know is a huge production, was produced in consultancy with Sami expert. And we do have actually films that we have many films that portray Roma. So the so-called Time of the Gypsies, one of the first movies to deal with the Roma topic of Emir Kusturica, were produced, but consultant was Rajko Đurić, who at that time was important Romani activist, writer, intellectual, and researcher. So many of the portrayals of the communities are based on the work of Rajko Đurić working with the director. We also have other examples of movies produced by the same director, like Black Cat, White Cat, that are also highly stereotypical and really operate with this image of the exotic and carefree gypsy. Indeed, in the former Czechoslovakia, now in the Czech Republic, the literature scene is basically, as we say, women's club. It is like, and this is very interesting when you look at it, because also one thing about which I write is that the proportion of female authors in Romani literature is by no way different by the proportion of the word Romani, of the word literature. You know, even in some countries, the literary scene is dominated or 90% formed by female authors, which is a very interesting phenomenon. If we look now at what is going on in the Czech Republic, we have Paramisaria, we have different clubs of Roma women who gather together, tell their stories, make them into book in collaboration with CARE, which is a great professional publishing house that promotes Romani literature in the mainstream scene. And when we look at this scene, it is very often formed by short stories because, of course, they so to say replicate the way you say stories when you gather together. So this is a sort of a pattern that is normalized, and the usual pattern of producing a collection of Romani literature by forming certain short stories. And they are, in this respect, they are neither female nor male. Like Andrzej Ginia, he also, it's the same pattern of having these short stories, and I don't see different from male or females. Or if I look at the stories by Ilona Ferkova, they are not, I can't say it is a male story or female stories. They are just stories that are funny and so on. But if we reflect on why it is so female dominating, and I always use the opportunity to ask questions to colleagues, why do you think there are so many female authors in your country? And of course, we have to think about the history. We know that Milena Hubsmanova was working with a lot of women, encouraging them to write, even though they didn't believe they can be published authors. So it has to do something also with this kind of encouragement of Milena Hubsmanova working together closely with female authors. And then the more female authors become published, the more maybe they become role models for the new generation that would come. Well, of course, Andrei Ginia's granddaughter is now also writing, so it has to do also with the family and so on. But this is a very interesting phenomenon. And why we don't have a novel? We do have, of course, novels in different countries, but of course, to write a novel, we know that this is so demanding. We know that it is often professional authors. That means you are only writing, and that's like your job. Produce novels because it's so demanding to work on it. You need research, you need your time to write, your time to revise. And when we look at the authors, all the published authors today, they have other jobs basically. So they run organizations, or they are teachers, or they are, whatever kind of profession they have, but they have their own professional life, they have their families, and they write. And of course, it's easier to produce a literary work in the form of a short story than to devote a whole lot of time for research and writing. And Meniher Lakatos, of course, he was probably able to do that because of being able to do it, to devote his time for this. But also we have novels today. Luminica Choba is about to publish a novel. Also Alia Krasniqi, who is usually a short stories author, also famous editor, publisher, and translator of Romani literature, based currently in Serbia. He also published recently a novel. We do have novels, but we don't have that many simply because of the lack of maybe resources and the lack of support. It is quite risky to produce a big manuscript and get supported. Publishers tend to support novels that are written by very established publishers, writers. The digital era provides a lot of possibility actually for many publishing initiatives that are in the field of minority publishing, not only Romani literature. And when we speak about the Romani literature in particular, I think there are a lot of possibilities that have been used so far, and I hope that this is just the beginning and more would be developed. So on the one hand, of course, the digital world gives possibilities for digitization of old materials. So materials that existed and were produced in the 19th century or early 20th century that are now digitized and published online and accessible for readers, for researchers, and for people. I would like to give one example only in this respect. As probably you know, there is this big publishing initiative in Romani language, in Cyrillic, in the Soviet Union in the end of 1920s until nearly the end of 1930s. So many publications, nearly 300 titles were published in Romani language, original literature, educational books, translations, and so on. And for instance, Victor Shapoval has published a lot about it in terms of production and content and so on. So part of this enormous book publishing initiative was, some titles were found and were digitized with one initiative that was together done by the Finnish National Library and the Russian National Library. So many books were digitized and are now fully accessible at one of the websites of the Finnish National Library, which is, of course, very beneficial for those who would like to be informed about this publishing initiative and who want to read these books. So we have, on the one hand, digitization of old materials, and we also have other materials that are digitized, not only literature, but also dictionaries and so on. Then also there are other possibilities that are to now publish contemporary literature in digital form. So you may have a book that is distributed in the publishing market physically, but also you can have this book as electronic edition that is accessible online. And that means that people who are interested and who can read this language, be it Romani or other, being based throughout the world, can access it only by having internet connection. And I think this is extremely important for Romani literature and access to it, because we know that different Romani dialects are spoken across the world. So if you publish a book, let's say in a Calderaș dialect, there would be Calderaș Roma who can read it literally in all continents where Roma live. And this is extremely important for access, but also for creating a knowledge among the Roma and also non-Roma about the richness of literature and raising the self-confidence of Roma by pointing to this literary heritage that is already there in the digital world. Also, digital means audio or video materials which can present Romani literature. So this is very important to have audio books, for instance. And many publishers, especially of children's literature, have thought about it and have produced CDs or other versions of Romani literature in Romani language that is distributed in this form. For instance, you probably know about the series Cătiții that was written by Caterina Taikon. That was this series of books were published in Swedish language and are now part of the national literary scene in Sweden. So literally every child in Sweden would read these books. But Fred Taikon, who is one of the famous Romani activists in Sweden and also was running a publishing house, produced a series of CDs of presenting extracts of Cătiții book series only in the Romani language for Romani children, written by Hans Calderaș, which is, of course, very important for providing access of the Romani children living in Sweden in their mother tongue. Then also we have literary works that can be produced in blocks. So authors would publish their poetry or their short stories directly online in literary blogs that can be mainstream literary blogs, or as part of a Romani radio or media blog online. And this is also, in terms of access, when you think about it, it is really encouraging that so many people could access it when it's on the internet. Also, today many artworks would be multi-genre. So you could have an exhibition that incorporates in it poems or paragraphs of Roma authors. There was this exhibition produced by ERIAC in Berlin that was presenting the experiences of Roma during the Second World War, and was paraphrasing the poem of Papusha, Ratfaleja Sva, Tears of Blood. So this exhibition was inspired by the name of the poem and was Savnokane Yasva, so Golden Tears. And this exhibition presented Roma art. So we can have, and basically literature is so interconnected with so many other arts in the Romani world. So if you think about music, songs are based on Romani text or on Romani poetry works and so on. So this is the song field. Then also theater plays. They are also interconnected literature because authors would write or translate them into Romani. And the same with the exhibition. We have many like multimedia Romani artists who would incorporate Romani text or would refer to Romani literature figures or text in their artworks. And I think that we will have more and more artists who produce digital content on the internet that would also refer or be based on Romani literary work. And when it comes, of course, to children, it is essential and important to produce texts that are targeted to children and also incorporate different digital means, maybe some kind of interactions or motives with play through digital means, or just audio materials that would also be more appealing to children audiences. One example I would like to give is, and I believe many Romani sections of radios or of media have their programs for children and would produce content for children. Radio Romano, which is part of the national radio in Sweden, where only Roma form the content, for instance, produces a lot of fairy tales or other kind of tales in Romani language, which are recorded for the radio and made accessible online on the website of the radio. And I believe such examples exist in most of the countries where there is a Romani edition. So the possibilities are many, and I would like to appeal also to those authors who have already created in the previous decades material to think about making it available through digital means, be it recording or be it making it digital and putting it online so that it can be accessed by more and more readers and users, because we have many valuable books that have been produced in the decades up to now, but don't have any print run, cannot be found in libraries, or cannot be accessed. And if they can be made digital and accessible, it would be really very, very good. Proiectul dialecto te penav ist arlisko. Кава сасо диалекто меси кавгям катари Лиляна Ковачева, тай Михаил Георгиев, тай са Амала, вон си осас Арлиес, то кава си проиectul диаlecto. Numa dav duma vie vlahicko, taj šajkeraf adaptacija pale kaldarashitsko, lovaritsko, tajaver, bibah take nađanav tumaro dialekto, no kasi sikavav. Zumavav te sikavav. Me pa kjav kaj čip zureler but miri buti. Jekto si kaj ameđanasa kaj čiptaj kultura džan vazvastenca. Kanadžanesi čip džanes butpali kultura. Sarte des pakiv, sarte si kavez, so šaj tepene, so šaj te des pativ te čipsi but importantno коекто. Одуито си канаджанес романичип Roma Janen, kaj tu si zoralo intereso, taj kameste si kaves majbut, taj des lenge pativ, taj si kaves kaj tu janes but pali romani kultura. A kanakeres buti romaneli lenca, tu musaj trebuite janes čip romani. Te janes sosi ande lila, sosi ande knjiškes. A taj romani čip putrel bud droma, palmange, kanakerav kontakto, kanakerav buti, kanakidav knjiškes, taj del mange zoran di buti, žutinel majbut. Mena jana penena kaj našavel oromadike na TV, media, radio, sa ando interneto keren gadžikanes. Numa vi medikav kaj Roma varasave Roma kamente zumavente sikaven pale. Ande Španija akana si Roma kaj sikaven teden duma romanes, taj sikaven vareso sar romano standardo sar si ande škola ande Rumunija. Taj lellila, taj sikaven, taj medikava vidurja kaj von kerena ande satemutno divese romaneči bjake, ande romaničip, taj kamente keren varasa vire vitalizacija. Taj si koje krik si tendencija te hasaveli čip, te ternete, te vakarenga džikanes, te žanen majbut anglikanes, taja ver. A koje turik si Roma kaj kamente te sikaven, pale, aj si Roma kaj keren knjiškes ando švedo, akana si rezande Roma, kaj nakerenas but knjiškes, numa kana romaničip si jek minoritetno čip, taj si ažutimos kaj žalak katarotem, kataro švedo, vivon kamena te keren varesa vire vitalizacija. Taj Roma, taj terne, te sikaven, te den duma romanes. Taj si je krik, taj dujtorik, taj me gindinava, me dominava kaj te aven vareso atraktivno, najfolkloro, najpurane butja, te avel vareso moderno antiromaničip, taj vieterne Roma, kaj silen kaven lenge intereso. Si rap romano antiromaničip, si filmorja dokumentalitska antiromaničip, te avel majbut vareso nevo antiromaničip, vika vel intereso maškare terne. Taj si terne Roma kaj pišinen skrinen andi romaničip ando interneto, vaj keren vidure romaneste, vaj aver, taj me pakjav kaj našti hasaveličip.